AEW Dynamite. Where to begin? The damn show that sometimes feels like a wrestling fever dream. I had the pleasure, or maybe the curse, of watching it, but I ended up dozing off more times than I'd like to admit. So, there I was, forced to rewatch some of it while pretending to be productive at work. Classic me, right? I'll give a nod to the show for finally injecting some life into the slog of a storyline between Adam Copeland and the Death Riders. For once, they showed some damn weakness and vulnerability in the group. It's about time, because it's been the same old repetitive bullshit for far too long. Internal strife in a faction? Now that's the kind of chaos that grabs you by the throat and demands attention. I'm grinning like a lunatic about Billy Starks getting a nod for the AEW main roster. Damn right, Ring of Honor should be a breeding ground for future AEW stars. Stop treating it like a forgotten relic, and make it matter as a developmental brand. Get those shining stars onto AEW Collision and Dynamite, for crying out loud. And finally, some love for Harley Cameron. When a wrestler starts getting a rise out of the crowd, you roll with it. Give them the spotlight and let the magic happen. Then there's the mad brawl between Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. This time, it didn't feel like a pointless scuffle in the crowd. No, sir. It packed a punch with some actual storytelling behind the swings. Kyle and Will are in a damn feud, and the setting made sense with the Don Callis family renting out a skybox party room. Thank goodness for that. Enough of the random crowd melees that make you scratch your head and wonder what the hell you just watched. Opening pyro? Hell yes. When you're ramping up to a pay-per-view, blow the roof off, especially with that California backdrop. A few fiery explosions to get the adrenaline pumping is exactly what we need. People underestimate AEW, but here's the deal. They give a damn about being a good company. They got the guts to own their weaknesses and try to do better. Sink or swim. They're choosing to swim, paddling furiously against the current. That's respectable as hell. They're acting like a real wrestling company, not some rich kid's plaything. And that, my friends, is a beautiful, messy, and utterly captivating thing. Dynamite kicked off with Adam Copeland, fresh out of an ambulance, laying down the law to the Death Riders. This will be your ride tonight, he growled, setting the stage for the chaos to come. The announcers rattled off the night's matches, and the crowd was living for it. Harley Cameron, Adam Page, the Outrunners, MJF, Orange Cassidy, and Konosuke Takeshita all got thunderous pops. That's what you want, establishing wrestlers by how loud the audience screams for them. It's like a litmus test for who should get that damn rocket strapped to their back. Plus, having intros to lay out the night's card beats the hell out of randomly throw you into a match with no context. Makes it feel more grounded, like there's a plan. Imagine that. Adam Page rolled up in a car that looked like something straight out of 70s schlock film, complete with longhorns on the hood. Sure, it's kinda cool, but the damn thing might have been assembled in a garage by a bunch of hack job mechanics. Some big gray relic that looked like a failed minivan prototype. Retro, I guess, but mostly ridiculous. Then, there's the backstage segment. AEW and their occasional forays into amateur hour. As Page made his way from his clunker to ringside, some staff member made a mockery of himself, tripping over a guardrail like it was Mount Everest or something. Come on, AEW, either reshoot or don't bother. It made the whole thing look amateurish. And while Page was parking, the ambulance Copeland rode in was awkwardly lurking nearby. Jarring? Yeah, but hey, continuity. In the world of wrestling, that's as rare as a dog walking on its hind legs. The match, Adam Page versus Aaron Solo, a quick squash, but Solo getting any offense was baffling. Let's face it, the guy is not going to headline AEW anytime soon. No one watches Ring of Honor. Does he even have matches there? If not, stick to being a squash magnet. Still, this quick start was a welcome change from the usual 30-minute opening epics with Will Ospreay. Sometimes you need a mix-up to keep the blood pumping. And with chatter about Page eventually chasing Moxley for the title, highlighting him in a feud with MJF paints a compelling opener. It cuts through the usual monotony like a hot knife through butter, kicking things off. Adam Page got himself a chair and a mic, and off he went, ranting about how much he hates biscuits. Some bizarre English I.O. nonsense, and a spray tan wannabe who had the audacity to spit in his face. Sure, it's comic relief, maybe not needed, but it hooks the crowd like a lure in murky water. Then, like every wrestler taking a page from the Stone Cold playbook, he vowed to camp out in that ring until MJF showed up for a showdown. MJF did make an entrance, bloody cloth in hand, with backstage footage revealing a battered Christopher Daniels. Now, plot hole alert. Why are Page and Daniels suddenly pals when just weeks ago they were trying to tear each other apart in a Texas death match? Regardless, the prospect of MJF versus Adam Page is juicy. I'm on board with the Revolution announcement, where they'll forego another gore fest and opt for a straight-up wrestling match. Thank goodness, because the hardcore stuff can wear thin fast. Whoever wins should surely aim for the World Heavyweight title at Dynasty, happening in April in Philly. Then comes a segment explaining Chris Jericho's match with Brian Keith, apparently part of some deal with the Don Callis family. Yet, Keith typically eats more losses than a bottom-feeding jobber. So, his hopes of being a bounty hunter with a shot at Will Ospreay is laughable. Keith's track record is spotty at best. The second match saw Brian Keith face off against Will Ospreay, a predictable affair. Imagine if Keith racked up wins on Dynamite, Collision, or at least had a highlight reel from Ring of Honor. It'd lend some credibility to him. Instead, the match almost seemed like a foregone conclusion with Ospreay poised to mop the floor with him. Ospreay was a spectacle with high-speed maneuvers and hard-hitting assaults. Keith, on the other hand, spent more time retreating than going on the offense. Some bounty hunter. Huh? You'd think he'd have a signature move or two to his name, but nope. Poor booking all around. with Ospreay sealing the deal with a Styles Clash and a hidden blade. The Real highlight came after, with Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher taking their beef to the crowd. There's finally a story there, adding weight to the chaos and making it matter. Then there's Momo Watanabe's promo package. Kudos to them for introducing her, but tossing her into a pay-per-view match when she's been off AWTV for ages feels a bit misaligned unless they ramp up their care, like it's a Forbidden Door event. Still, we see some continuity with Mercedes Monespat with Billy Starks, hinting at a graduation from Ring of Honor to the main rosters. AEW could follow WWE's pattern, making developmental leagues a stepping stone for stardom. Finally, the match between Brian Cage and Lance Archer against the Outrunners was my cue to nod off. I didn't care much. The Outrunners winning was a surprise, thanks to distractions courtesy of the Hurt Syndicate. While an Outrunners versus Syndicate matchup would buzz with heel versus villain vibes, this was marred by the Callis family muscle. To everyone's detriment. At work. During my break time, I decided to watch the rest of the show. The 9 o'clock segment was fucking epic, with Ricochet and Swerve Strickland tearing it up. In my opinion, Ricochet needs a hell of a character journey in AEW. He didn't get the damn opportunities in WWE. But now, it's like they're finally understanding that in professional wrestling, having a character matters just as much as the crazy moves. Thank fuck All Elite Wrestling is proving that by giving chances to folks like Swerve and Ricochet who got overlooked by WWE. Swerve got one of the loudest goddamn pops of the night, and Ricochet received one hell of a heel reaction. Ricochet comes out looking like Steve Urkel dressed as a valedictorian, and damn, he knows when his antics piss people off. So he picks those moments perfectly. Despite the dorky look, he knows criticism can work in his favor, and honestly, I'm proud of him for that. They announced that if Ricochet accepts, he'll face Swerve in a match where the winner becomes the #1 contender for the AEW Championship. I love the realism because both Ricochet and Swerve are chasing gold, and they're getting massive reactions in the crowd. Unlike MJF and Hangman Adam Page, whose characters are wandering around like lost puppies, these two have their shit together. Swerve might have lost some big PPV matches, but he still draws a crazy response, and he's got his sights set on being champion again by dealing with Ricochet's usual bullshit. Ricochet was once considered a goofy comedy character, but he's shifted into a top-notch villain with a solid character motivation. He sees himself as a champion and will do whatever the hell he needs to. Honestly, the stipulation works perfectly. I fucking predict a Swerve Strickland versus Jon Moxley showdown, because that sounds like the kind of big money match that fills arenas. Adam Copeland versus Ricochet? Not so much. When they added the #1 contendership stipulation, I lost my shit. It worked and got one hell of a reaction. They're not diving into a hardcore match. Thankfully, as we got enough of those stipulations on the Revolution card. Good on AEW for not oversaturating the pay-per-view with the same old shit. That said, I've got a big-ass criticism about the AEW pay-per-view. There's too much Rin Sanderpee with these matches. Swerve versus Ricochet again. Well, Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher for probably the 6th damn time. Tony Storm versus Mariah May for the 3rd time. And how many times have MJF and Hangman squared off? Oh, and let's not forget Kenny Omega and Konosuke Takeshita going at it in Japan. AEW's gotta be careful not to rely too much on repeat matches and storylines, because it feels like they're struggling for fresh ideas. A show like Revolution should be the shitstorm that kicks off new feuds and storylines, while something like World's End in December could wrap things up nicely with repeat matches to end feuds. Even though this may be another repeat match, I genuinely think that Ricochet versus Swerve Strickland is going to draw a massive crowd to the pay-per-view. Honestly, I told myself, damn it, I wish I was going to Los Angeles instead of Tennessee. I'm starting to regret choosing Nashville over this AEW pay-per-view in LA. The match with Harley Cameron versus Diana Perazzo put me to sleep, and somebody had to wake me up at work. Fortunately, this was during my work break. I'm happy that the match did not go on a long time, and I'm happy Harley won. I actually wish somebody attacked her so she would have a match on the card, or she was wrestling a female wrestler with a large personality, and that way she's off to the races for AEW Revolution. I decided to skip the triple threat tag team match, because I'm not a fan due to the number of people to follow. Plus, watching it almost put me to sleep. However, I'm happy to see that the pay-per-view will feature Daniel Garcia versus Adam Cole. That match could elevate Garcia, and I have no problem with him dropping the championship to Adam Cole, because Adam Cole deserves a single title and is way more popular with fans. It'll be interesting to see what AEW does next. The main event was Konosuke Takeshita versus Orange Cassidy. I was very proud of Cassidy because, during the match, he minimized the comedy spots. Although there was a joke between him and Don Callis about stealing his glasses, he didn't do the comedy kicks, which often look silly. I was also upset because I didn't know the rules of the Intercontinental Tournament. It turns out if Takeshita loses at any point, the winner gains the international title. The tournament's prize is defending it against Kenny Omega at AEW Revolution, which doesn't make a lot of sense. It would be more logical for Kenny Omega to be in the tournament, given he's not the champion, to face Takeshita, who is actually holding the title. Don Callis could have claimed that Takeshita would defend the title every week up until Revolution to demonstrate his dominance. This approach would make more sense than having a poorly explained tournament with the ultimate prize of a match against Kenny Omega. A prize match involve a major wrestler. For instance, a WWE storyline where the Royal Rumble winner faces The Undertaker, even without a title on the line, or a tournament where the winner faces John Cena in his retirement match. While Kenny Omega has achieved great things, the stipulation makes him appear out of Takeshita's league, even though Takeshita is the champion. The match itself was excellent, and I appreciated Orange Cassidy avoiding comedy spots. There were numerous counters and reversals, including a sequence where Takeshita countered several DDT and stun attempts into his Blue Thunder Bomb. Toward the match's end, Orange Cassidy invited Takeshita to fight on the announce table. I appreciated the referees starting the 10 count after a few seconds, as AEW refs often overlook out-of-ring fighting, which is supposed to lead to disqualification if it exceeds 10 seconds. However, there was a logical issue. If Orange Cassidy had incapacitated both himself and Takeshita on the table, and neither could return before the count, the champion retains the title, which adds a bit of inconsistency. Nevertheless, Cassidy showed how great he is when he drops the comedy and seriousness ensues. This was much better than last week because Takeshita was believable and serious, and Don Callis was an excellent manager for him by having Takeshita win during the main event. AEW elevated him more than having Cassidy face Roderick Strong, a less featured wrestler who doesn't excel in promos. It was refreshing to see a main event wrestler taken seriously, prompting me to watch rather than skip, as I did last week. In my opinion, this was one of Cassidy's best matches because he didn't rely on comedy kicks. He played his character well, aiming to win the international title and face Omega in a legendary match. He's learning when the comedy kicks work to excite the crowd, and when they don't, show immaturity. Overall, the show was a massive improvement. The Moxley versus Copeland storyline had progression. The Moxley faction's vulnerabilities were revealed, highlighting Moxley as a hypocrite about sacrifice and teamwork. Adding Willow to Adam Copeland's circle is a great move, as a Willow versus Marina Shaffer match would be fantastic, especially if they end up on opposite teams for an AEW double or nothing anarchy in the arena match. I appreciated Billy Starks graduating from Ring of Honor and appearing on AEW Dynamite, showing that Ring of Honor is becoming a developmental brand as it should. Strickland versus Ricochet and MJF versus Hangman are must-see pay-per-view matches, adding great anticipation for the upcoming event.